for chain dragging around on the bottom, you know, tearing up the eelgrass that Sherry's been making reference to. You know, we've come to refer to that as the slash circle or the slash zone, as opposed to crop circles that you've heard them referred to as. And it's I've come to realize that it's a really big deal, you know, not from, you know, my personal perspective, but from my environmental caring perspective, that there's acres of eelgrass being torn up by chain, you know, slashed to pieces by chain, which is completely unnecessary. The elastic roads are just as affordable, and what you can see here is they float directly up off the bottom. That's what this is right here, is an elastic road. Hold that. Can you pull a little bit? You see how it stretches? You see how it stretches? That's the elastic. And you know, it being elastic means it can be a lot shorter than chain. It absorbs a lot more of the shock that a longer chain would. But this is how it is underwater. Now this down here is attached to the anchor, and it floats directly up off the seafloor, as opposed to chain that, you know, imagine this is chain and instead of elastic, which is constantly dragging around on the seafloor, digging it up. Chain wears out after about 5 years. You know, so I'm not proposing that anyone go, you know, that a whole mooring field or whatever necessarily throws their chain away now and replaces it with elastic. In that it wears out after 5 years, instead of replacing it with chain, new chain, you replace it with elastic. So here we are reducing the amount of slashing, or, you know, restoring eelgrass for virtually no money. You know, there don't need to be any grants involved. They don't mean, you guys don't need to fund it. You know, it would be nice if somebody, you know, pitched in and did whole mooring fields, but in fact, it's the responsibility, or it's necessary for the mooring owner to upgrade or replace his gear every 5 years anyhow. You know, so nobody but the mooring holder really needs to pay for this. And I believe it's every bit as important as any of the projects you guys are talking about: road runoff, septic systems, sewer systems, any of the rest of it. You know, this is as effective as any of those, because, like I say, there are acres of eelgrass being destroyed every day that could be absorbing nitrogen. The turbidity that Sherry was talking about could be hugely reduced, because at the same time the chain is slashing everything to pieces, it's also stirring up the bottom. So the light can't penetrate to the bottom to, you know, help grow the eelgrass, etc. It's just, you know, in the, you know, last week I was at a coastal conference that, you know, thanks to Jerry, I heard about, and I kept hearing myself, you know, talking about this, and the more I heard, the more I came to realize that, again, it's much less about, you know, my little business or something, and way more about stopping the destruction of eelgrass. There was a, you know, great organization, similar organization to yours over there, that had this wonderful brochure, you know, really pretty, you know, scene of a catboat, you know, very tranquil at sunset, you know, moored in a, you know, a marsh grass kind of area. What I saw was that that catboat was on a mooring that was tearing up the eelgrass, whereas if someone had been in that marsh grass next to it, digging it up with a shovel, that person would have been in jail. You know, but meanwhile, we're all kind of sitting back because we can't see it and allowing this to go on. You know, I'll leave you with 40 years ago, I was a professional sailor in the Caribbean. The little tiny third world British Virgin Islands government told us that we could no longer anchor in the turtle grass or the coral. And they started using mooring rigs very similar to this 40 years ago. You know, and you know, at first I was like, how could that be? How could it possibly take us that long to clue in when we supposedly care and are environmentally oriented and all that stuff? Well, there's a major difference between there and here. Can anybody think of what it is? It's called out of sight, out of mind. In the British Virgin Islands, you can look over the side of the boat and see exactly what that chain and anchor is doing. Here, we can't see it, and we've come to not care about it. And that has to change. Thank you.
Life expectancy is 15 years?
I started using them in the harbor 15 years ago. They're still there, still going strong.
So it's 3 times the length of a chain.
At the minimum. And, you know, there's this security thing where, you know, with inspections and that whole thing, which is extremely difficult to manage for a harbor department, I can tell you from experience. We know that chain is going to fail after 5 years. We know that elastic is going to last 15. You know, so even if everybody turns their back on inspections and, you know, doing the maintenance and that whole thing, the elastic is safer, you know, by a long shot, you know, which is an aid to the environment also, because boats aren't going on the beach spilling oil and such. Yes, Danielle?
I was wondering if you had a carbon fiber wrap, or like your storm soft thimbles with you. I just wanted to check out.
That's the thimble. The shackles end up looking exactly the same. I don't have any of those.
So basically, that's just like a carbon fiber wrap.
This is the carbon fiber wrap.
Okay, I was just curious to like,
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and well,
like,
and that's
why would you put a carbon fiber?
Well, the guys in Florida came up with this to make it all last even longer. What it does is it keeps the metal to metal. See, there's a shackle that fits in this.
Yep.
And normally there would be metal making contact with metal, wearing off the galvanization. You cover it with carbon, and the galvanizing doesn't wear off, and the shackle and thimble last into eternity.
Yeah.
You know, what I didn't mention is, you know, there's a huge long-term cost savings here. A lot of you are probably familiar that in the fall, conventionally, you take off your mooring ball and replace it with a winter stick. Big expense, you know, big hassle. Everything's got bottom paint on it, you know, which is, you know, a whole nother issue of killing our ponds. These rigs have been in Vineyard Haven Harbor 15 years without being touched. No winter sticks, no bottom paint, no switching from one rig to another. We have a diver go down and check thoroughly to make sure everything's still good, and it still is after 15 years, and there hasn't been a single failure. You know, there have been failures of chain moorings during that time. You know, Vineyard Haven Harbor is an excellent testing ground for this stuff. I mean, it's one of the most dynamic harbors you can find, and you know, some of the most traditional big boat owners in Vineyard Haven are like, they won't get on a conventional mooring anymore. You know, when they go to moor their boat, they look for one of these.
Yeah, I remember like I was talking with when we went out with the Tashmoo Harbor attendant. I don't know ambassador to Teshmu. I went out with him, and you know, he had to call up the harbor master to find out if that mooring was inspected, and like, you know, so a lot of, I think, boaters, transient boaters, or just, you know, day trippers would love to be on one of these, because, you know, it's like, if you know, I'm on one of these kind of moorings in the lagoon, and it's great, but also it's like, you know, you're taking a risk too.
Yeah.
On a chain, because
Yes,
you don't
you
know when
are.
it was last inspected.
Yes,
and
you are.
those inspections are sometimes far and few between.
That's right.
And I just wanted to say, like, if anybody wants to see one of these up close, they can come out with me and walk around in waders. I'm sure they have seen them if they've been out scalloping in the lagoon, but, you know, next to, that's what my boat's on. Or the shellfish boat, I should say, 'cause
That we put in
but yeah,
15 years ago, and it's still going strong.
that was put in 15 years
Yes.
ago? Okay, I was wondering when that was.
You know, 13, 15, somewhere in that range.
But it's great. I mean,
Yeah.
like,
Harriet, did you
Sorry?
have your hand?
Yeah, I was wondering, is this what the Kennedys have over there with their Hinckley?
Yes,
It is.
yes.
And how, I know the Hinckley is very expensive, but,
It's actually a Shelter Island runabout that resembles a Hinckley. It's a much better boat than a Hinckley,
Oh,
but
okay.
go ahead.
all right.
Not as expensive, probably.
What more
Oh,
expensive?
probably
Yeah.
more, sure. Yeah, and even though it's
It
good
goes
for
about
fishing,
twice
you
as
can't
fast
fish
and
on it,
everything
they don't like the smell.
else.
Okay.
So what was the
The
question?
question is it safe and how long have they had it?
They've just had it this season.
Oh, they have.
But it is absolutely safe.
Yeah.
You know, I put it in there, I put the boat on it, you know, I'm fully responsible, as I have been with the ones in Vineyard Haven Harbor that are very much the same, and no failures in 15 years.
Yeah.
So Jay, as we talked on the phone, one of the things that occurred this summer, and Sherry can attest to this, we had an eelgrass committee, and one of the recommendations of the eelgrass committee was to replace conventional moorings with chains that drag with a technology that doesn't drag on the bottom and disrupt the eelgrass.
Yes, sir.
And I think that conclusion is something that TWI buy into, and we'll put a note in the newsletter about this.
Right.
So what would you have TWI do?
You know,
Because one of the things we won't do is endorse a particular product.
And no way am I asking or suggesting or anything else that you do that.
How many other similar kind of systems?
There's two others that are in the marketplace, essentially, in this market. There are some ship style and such as that out there. You know, the marketplace will take care of, you know, people ending up wanting the best and most affordable version. You know, I don't have to be concerned about that.
What's the range of prices, Jay, would you say? If you go for the cheapest to the...
You know, the others are, this is actually the most affordable. This version called Storm Soft. And, you know, I had this particular version developed specifically for our area. It's an even more affordable version. You know, the standard Storm Soft and the standard moorings that are out there are really based around, you know, 40-foot boats. We have very few of those.
Right.
You know, this is based on a under 30-foot boat.
So what would that cost, for instance?
$600. The whole rig.
Okay.
You know, using the existing anchor. Let me make that clear. That, you know, I'm not talking about. We don't need to replace anchors for the most part.
Right.
You know, it's much less environmentally disturbing to the area
Right.
to use the existing anchor, and the anchors are working. You know, so there's no reason to ask people to spend a bunch of money. When these first started being marketed, and it was very brief, but they were being marketed with a helical anchor, which are actually quite expensive. You know, so the word sort of got out there that, oh, you have to spend a lot of money, you know, to have an elastic mooring, when in fact nothing could be further from the truth.
What is the range?
the range of price, $600 to $1,250 for a boat up to 55 feet. So over 30 feet, you have to spend
More.
$1,250. But think of the difference in price of those boats, you know, also. But for the average mooring owner around here, this is the version, $600. You know, it costs a minimum of $400 to replace your chain. You know, so it's kind of, and once you do this, you're done. You know, for the life of your boat, for the time you have a mooring, you're not ever going to have to replace anything again. So
can I-
back to your question, Jerry. You know, I'm not really asking you to do anything. I just want you to be aware, you know, that this option is out there, and it is a very effective way of restoring our ponds, restoring our water quality that is not on the table at the moment. So, you know, really it's up to you guys, I think, if you want to put it on the table. You know, the Tisbury Selectmen, you know, to their credit, are trying to get it on the table. You know, but, you know, that's only going to be so effective, or you know, hard to tell just how that's going to play out. You know, I haven't gotten a lot of information on how that is intended to play out. But, you know, I just believe that just like TWI cleaned the harbor up by dredging, you know, cleaned the harbor up by instituting pump outs, you know, this is one of the next steps, or a very viable step. And how TWI goes about, you know, getting it out there is, you know, you've already started with your newsletter. You know, I think, you know, your membership just needs to be informed. You know, your board, you know, carries a lot of weight around here. And it just, you know, you being informed, I think is going to help, you know, further this cause.
Okay, thanks, Jay.
Okay.
When I saw the Water Alliance agenda, I noted that you were going to talk about